Today, we are going to read this book, The Conquest of the Happiness. Part 1, Causes of Unhappiness. First, what makes people unhappy? Animals are happy so long as they have health and enough to eat. Human beings, one feels, ought to be, but in the modern world, they are not, at least in a great majority of cases. If you are unhappy yourself, you will probably be prepared to admit that you are not exceptional in this. If you are happy, ask yourself how many of your friends are so, and when you have reviewed your friends, teach yourself the art of reading faces. Make yourself receptive to the moods of those whom you met in the courses of an ordinary day. A mark in every face I met, marks of weakness, marks of wow, says Blake. Though the kinds are different, you will find that unhappiness meets you everywhere. Let us suppose that you are in New York, the most typical modern of great cities. Stand in a busy street during working hours, or on a main thoroughfare at a weekend, or at a dance of evening. Empty your mind of your own ego and let the personality of the strangers about you take possession of you one and another. You will find that each of these different crowds has its own trouble. In the work hour crowd, you will see anxiety, excessive concentration, dyspepsia, lack of interest in anything but the struggle, incapacity for play, unconsciousness of their fellow creatures. On a main road at a weekend, you will see men and women, all comfortably off, and some very rich, engaged in the pursuits of pleasure. This pursuit is conducted by all at a uniform pace, that of the slowest car in the procession. It's impossible to see the road for the cars, or the scenery, since looking aside would cause an accident. All the occupants of all the cars are absorbed in the desire to pass other cars, which they cannot do on account of the crowd. If their minds wander from this preoccupation, as will happen occasionally to those who are not themselves driving, unutterable boredom sighs upon them, and stamp their features with trivial disdain. Once in a way, a car loaded of colored people will show genuine enjoyment, but will cause indignation by erratic behaviors, and ultimately get into the hands of the police owing to an accident. Enjoyment in holiday time is illegal. Or again, watch people at a gay evening, or come determined to be happy, with a kind of grim resolve with which one determined not to make a fuss at the dentist's. It's held that drinking and petting are the gateways to joy, so people get drunk quickly and try not to notice how much their partners disgust them. After a sufficient amount of drink, men begin to weep and to lament how unworthy they are, morally, of the devotion of their mothers. All that alcohol does for them is to liberate the sense of sin, which reason suppresses in saner moments. The cause of these various kinds of unhappiness lies partly in the social system, partly in individual psychology, which, of course, is itself, to a considerable extent, a product of the social system. I have written before the changes in the social system required to promote happiness, concentrating in the abolition. How to pronounce this one? Let me search. Abolition. concerning the abolition of war, of economic exploitation, of education in cruelty and fear. It's not my intention to speak in this volume. To discover a system for the avoidance of war is a vital need for our civilization. But no such system has a chance while men are so unhappy that mutually extermination seems to them less dreadful than continually endurance of the light of the day. To prevent the perpetuation of poverty is necessary if the benefits of machine production are so accurate in any degree to those most in need of them. But what's the use of making everybody rich if the rich themselves are miserable? Education is cruelty and fear is bad, but no other kind can be given by those who are themselves the slaves of these passions. This consideration led us to the problem of the individual. What can a man or woman, here and now, in the midst of our nostalgic society, do to achieve happiness for themselves or herself? In discussing this problem, I shall confine my attention to those who are not subject to any extreme courses of outward misery. I shall assume a sufficient income to secure food and shelter, sufficient health to make ordinary bodily activity possible. I shall not consider the great catastrophes, such as loss of all one's children or public disgrace. There are things to be said about such matters, and they are important things, but they belong to a different order from the things that I wish to say. My purpose is to suggest a cure for the ordinary day-to-day unhappiness for which most people in civilized countries suffer, and which is all the most unbearable because, having no obvious external cause, it appears inescapable. I believe this unhappiness to be very largely due to mistaken views of the world, mistaken ethics, mistaken habits of life, leading to destruction of that nature disease, and appetite for possible things upon which all happiness, whether of men or animals, ultimately depends. These are matters which lie within the power of the individual, and I propose to suggest the change by which his happiness, given average good fortune, may be achieved. Perhaps the best introduction to the philosophy which I wish to advocate will be a few words of autobiography. I was not born happy. As a child, my favorite hymn was "Weary of earth and land with my sin." At the age of 5, I reflected that if I wished to live to be 70, I had only endured so far a 14th part of my whole life, and I feel the long spread out boredom ahead of me to be almost unendurable. In adolescence, I hated life and was continually on the verge of suicide, from which, however, I was restrained by the desire to know more mathematics. Now, on the contrary, I enjoy life. I might almost say that with every year that passes, I enjoy it more. This is due partially to having discovered what were the things that I most desired and have gradually acquired many of these things. Partly is due to having successfully dismissed certain objects of desire, such as the acquisition of indubitable knowledge about something or others as essentially unattainable. So what is indubitable knowledge? indubitable, such as the acquisition of indubitable knowledge about something or other as essentially unattainable, but very largely it is due to a diminishing preoccupation with myself. Like others who had a Puritan education, I had the habit of meditating on my sin, follies, and shortcomings. I seemed to myself, no doubt justly, a miserable special specimen, a specimen, specimen, specimen. Gradually, I learned to be indifferent to myself and my deficiencies. I came to center my attention increasingly upon external objects, the status of the world, various branches of knowledge, individuals from whom I feel affection. External interests, it's true, bring each its own possibility of pain. The world may be plunged in war, knowledge in some direction may be hard to achieve, friends may die, but pains of these kinds do not destroy the essential quality of life, as do those that spring from disgust with self. And every external interest inspires some activity which, as so long as interest remains alive, is a completed preventive of ennui. Ennui. And every external interest inspires some activity which, as so long as the interest remains alive, is a completed preventive of ennui. Interest in self, on the contrary, leads to no active of a progressive kind. It may lead to the keeping of a diary, to getting psychoanalysis, or perhaps to become a monk. But the monk will not be happy until the routine of the monastery have made him forgive his own soul. The happiness which he attributes to religion he could have obtained from becoming a cross sweeper, provided he were compelled to remain one. External discipline is the only road to happiness for those unfortunate whose self-absorption is too profound to be cured in any other way. Self-absorption is of various kinds. We may take the sinner, the narcissist, and the megalomaniac as three very common types. Megalomaniac, megalomaniac. And the megalomaniac has three very common types. When I speak of the sinner, I don't mean the man who committed sins. Sins are committed by everyone or no one, according to our definition of the word. I mean the man who is absorbed in the consciousness of sin. This man is perpetually incurs his own disapproval, which, if he is religious, he interprets as the disapproval of God. He has an image of himself as he thinks he ought to be, which is continually conflict with his knowledge of himself as he is. If, in his conscious thought, he has long since discarded the maximum that he was taught at his mother's knee, his sins in sin may be burned deep in his unconscious, and only emerge when he is drunk or asleep. Nevertheless, it may suffice. How to pronounce this one? Suffice. Nevertheless, it may suffice to take the Savior out of everything. At bottom, he still accepts all the prohibition. he was taught in infancy. Swearing is wicked, drinking is wicked, ordinary business, shrewdness is wicked, above all, sex is wicked. He does not, of course, abstain from any of these pleasures, but they are all poisoned from him for the feeling that they degrade him. The one pleasure that he desires with his whole soul is that of being approvingly caressed by his mother, which he can remember having experienced in childhood. This pleasure being no longer open to him, he feels that nothing matters. Since he must sin, he decides to sin deeply. When he falls in love, he looks for maternal tenderness but cannot accept it because owing to the mother image, he feels no respect for any woman with whom he had sexual relations. Then in his disappointment, he becomes cruel, repents of his cruelty, and starts afresh on the dreary round of imaging sin and real remorse. This is the psychology of very many apparently hard-boiled reprobates. What drives them astray is devotion to an unattainable object, mother or mother substitute, together with the inculcation in early years of a ridiculous ethical code. Liberation from the tyranny of early belief and affection is the first step towards happiness for those victims of maternal virtue. Okay, I finished the first chapter. I will keep reading tomorrow. Bye.